The nurse gave me the answer before she spoke. When she stepped into my hospital room that evening, I could tell something was wrong. She quietly explained that my pastor had come to visit, but had been turned away because someone had placed a note in my medical file saying all visitors needed approval from my next of kin. That person was my daughter-in-law, Melissa. She believed my stroke had left me unable to speak, making it easy for her to take control, without anyone questioning her decisions. What she did not know was that my speech had already returned, and I was finally able to defend myself. I am 70 years old and spent nearly 4 decades working as a land surveyor. My job taught me the importance of boundaries and the damage that happens when someone quietly crosses them. After my wife Grace passed away 3 years earlier, my son Ethan stayed close to me. He visited often and always tried to help. His wife Melissa appeared just as caring, but over the years I noticed something unsettling. Every controlling decision she made came disguised as kindness. She organized family dinners, answered questions directed at me, and slowly inserted herself into every part of my life until it seemed completely normal. Each action looked loving on its own, but together they formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. My stroke happened while I was picking tomatoes from the garden my late wife had planted years ago. One moment I was standing in the backyard, and the next I woke up in a hospital bed surrounded by machines. Ethan rushed to my side immediately, clearly terrified of losing me. Melissa arrived much later, calm and collected. She quickly introduced herself to the nurses as the family contact and confidently took charge of conversations about my care. At the time, I was too weak to understand exactly what she was doing. Everything changed when the nurse handed me my phone. My first call was to my attorney, Rebecca Carter, who had helped update my legal documents only a few months earlier. She reminded me that Ethan alone was listed as my healthcare proxy. Melissa had absolutely no legal authority to make medical decisions or restrict visitors. Rebecca immediately contacted the hospital, had the false note removed, and promised she would be there within the hour. My second call was to Pastor James Walker, who had been my pastor for more than 20 years. He had comforted my wife and me through life's hardest moments, yet Melissa had turned him away like he was a stranger. When I called, he admitted he was still sitting in the hospital parking lot because something had not felt right. Within minutes, he was sitting beside my bed, listening as I explained everything that had happened over the past 8 years. He quietly told me Melissa had mistaken my silence for weakness and underestimated the man she was dealing with. Soon, Rebecca arrived carrying copies of my healthcare directive. She personally delivered the paperwork to the hospital staff, making it unmistakably clear that Melissa had no authority over my care. She also recommended strengthening every legal document I owned, so nobody could ever exploit another medical emergency. I agreed without hesitation. Later that evening, Melissa walked confidently into my room, expecting everything to be under her control. Instead, she found me sitting upright with my attorney on one side and my pastor on the other. For the first time since joining our family, she looked genuinely shaken. Rebecca calmly informed her that the hospital had removed the unauthorized note and that official documents confirming my wishes had already been filed. Melissa insisted she had only been trying to protect me, but I finally spoke the words I had held back for years. I explained that I had watched her slowly take control of situations by disguising control as love. Turning away people who mattered most to me was the first undeniable line she had crossed, and I would never allow it again. The following morning, Ethan came alone. I told him everything I had kept inside for years. He admitted he had never realized how far Melissa's behavior had gone. He believed she wanted to help, but had learned unhealthy habits growing up in a home where controlling people was mistaken for caring for them. I told him that explanation did not erase what happened. Real love respects boundaries instead of replacing them. He promised we would have an honest family conversation after I returned home. Once I was discharged, Rebecca met me at my house and updated every legal document. My healthcare instructions became even clearer. Visitor rules were written in detail and every possible loophole was closed. No one would ever again mistake kindness for authority. A few weeks later, Ethan, Melissa, and I finally sat down together. It was one of the hardest conversations our family had ever faced. Melissa surprised me by admitting that much of her behavior came from the way she had been raised. She realized she had confused controlling people with protecting them. She did not ask for forgiveness. She simply accepted responsibility. I told her my home, my healthcare, and my life would always remain my decisions. If our family was going to heal, that truth had to be respected first. We shared dinner afterward. The conversation was quieter than it had been in years, but it was also more honest. For the first time, nobody tried to manage anyone else. When I returned home that evening, I looked out at the empty tomato garden where my wife and I had spent so many autumn afternoons together. The plants would grow again in the spring, just as they always had. Some traditions deserve to continue because they remind us of the people we refuse to forget. That hospital stay taught me something I wish I had learned much sooner. Boundaries are not acts of selfishness. They protect the people and relationships that matter most. A stroke temporarily stole my strength, but it also gave me the clarity to defend my voice. I spent my career measuring property lines, yet the most important boundary I ever protected was the one around my own life. The moment I asked the nurse for my phone, everything began to change because I finally chose to speak before someone else decided to speak for me.